Hi guys, welcome to Travel Tuesday episode 2. Today I'm going to talk about 10 tips for people, 10 tips for Indians who are traveling from India to UK. In a couple of months, colleges will have new sessions starting and people will be coming over to study, and there are always people coming over for work, sometimes long term, sometimes short term, sometimes for tourism. So these things will apply to all of them, but it will apply more for the people who are going to stay here for a longer time. I have lived in both the cultures, both UK for about more than a decade and a couple of decades in India as well. And I love both the cultures. They have their differences. So I'm going to talk about some of those differences in these tips. And let me just clear that I do not mean to disrespect either of the cultures because they're both my cultures because of the way I have spent my life in both of them. But I do have a sense of humor. So sometimes I make jokes about things that are different, which is, well, comedy. But it's just meant to be helpful for people who are moving here from India. So with that, let's get started. Okay, I was going to have 10 tips, but there were so many things to talk about. These are actually going to be like 13 tips, lucky number. So let's start with that. The first one is the personal space. The definition of personal space in India and UK is very different because India is very crowded. Everybody knows that. You've all seen the movies and everything. So the crowd behavior is more acceptable. If you're very close to other people, that doesn't matter. It's all right. Whereas here, it's okay for like crowded train or bus or in the lift, but is sometimes, like for example, I'll give you a quick example. If you're standing in the ATM queue, like the cash machine, so if you have one person who is using the cash machine and there's another person behind them, in India they would be right next to them, whereas here it would be at least you can put 3 or 4 people in between these two people. So if you are, sometimes people are standing so far away you don't even know if they're standing in the queue or not, and you have to ask them like, are you standing in the queue? And they're like, no, or something like, yeah, I am. So you never know. So be careful about that don't be too close to people, especially in the queues for taxis, especially in the queues for ATMs or things like that. So be mindful of that. Okay, second is no littering. This is something that people from India usually take care of automatically when they go to foreign countries. It's just when they come back to India, something happens to them and they start throwing litter around. But here it's a very serious thing. So if you throw, like for example, if you drink water and throw the water bottle on the footpath, if one of the wardens, the community council people, somebody sees you, you can be fined for that. So it's a serious thing, and the fine is like heavy. It's about like 100 pounds, so and more sometimes. So be careful of that. Third thing is when you're asking directions, if you're asking any questions of people, and sometimes, well, it's not everybody's going to be very fluent in English when they land here. So if you have any issues with that, be mindful. Have your questions ready in a clear language as short as possible, and then ask somebody. And keep in mind that while you're asking directions of somebody else or directions or any other information, they might not know because they might be a tourist or they might be somebody from outside like you. Especially in London, there are lots of people who come from outside within the UK or from Europe or from other countries to visit London or to work there. People might not know. So a better bet it would be to ask a policeman. Yes, here you can ask policemen for directions or other information. They would usually be helpful. Or you can ask somebody who maybe works there in an airport or in a station or somewhere like that. If they work there, they are more likely to be local. They're more likely to know the thing that you are asking. So have clear questions and ask. Be careful of who you are asking. And sometimes Londoners can be rude as well. Yeah, I say stereotype, but I've seen that. So just don't stop anybody who's going for their work or anything. You can't stop just anybody. Be careful. Be careful, otherwise you might have an unpleasant experience. Otherwise, people are usually nice. So if you don't get them on the wrong time or wrong mood, they're usually okay and they will be helpful. If you're coming to North, however, everything is fine. People are lovely here. Okay, let's go fourth. So the fourth is mind where you walk. Especially if you have suitcases, if you have bags. Okay, let me touch on this as well quickly. Don't bring too much stuff. Don't pack everything from there. Everything is available here. You can buy everything people tell you that everything is expensive here is not. You can find cheaper clothes as well, you can find cheaper food as well, you can find good stuff in very reasonable prices here pretty much everywhere, including London. So don't bring anything that you don't need immediately, or something that you cannot find here. For example, something that is of emotional attachment that you have with something, like agar mummy ne Ganesh ji ki murti di hai choti si, then you have to bring that. So that's all right. But other than that, don't pack like the whole house and the kitchen sink in your suitcase and bring that. Try to bring only as much stuff as you can manage yourself without anybody's help at the airport, at the station. So backpack, bag, whatever. But you should be with your 2 hands in the back. You should be able to manage your luggage. And while you're moving around, be mindful of where you are stepping. I have been guilty of that quite a lot, even recently in Manchester a couple of times. So otherwise, what will happen is that if you start moving before you look, you're going to bump into people. Please don't do that. That happens a lot. So before you move, it's like when you drive. So you first look in the mirror, see that you're clear, start the engine, and then check the mirrors and indicate, and then move. So don't have to indicate when you're walking, but do take a look around as to where you're walking. If you're standing somewhere, you suddenly start walking, you might bump into people. So be careful of that. Fifth is the open doors for people. You are not a doorman, I know, but here people do hold the doors for other people. So if you are going through a door, if it's a really crowded place like an airport, people might not do that. But even if it's like an airport toilet, people would hold the door for somebody if they're coming out of the restroom. So, and I said restroom, which is American. So out of the toilet, if they're coming out of the loo, they might hold the door for the person who is behind them. And if you're going through any door, any building doors or anything, be careful as to who is behind you. Don't just leave the door and let it hit them in the face. So, and people do hold the door for each other, and people do say thanks if somebody holds the door for you. The general rule is that for girls, you open the door in front, so like you let them go first, and for guys, you pass through and then you hold the door for them behind. This is like a general rule, but it's not like a hard and fast rule. So depending on the situation, whether the door opens for inside or outside, all of those things come into play as well. But yes, do remember that people do hold the doors open for each other. You do that, and if somebody holds the door for you, say thank you. Okay, and that brings me to my next point. The please and thank you here are not optional. In India, I struggle that with a lot, because even when I go for a short one, I keep just saying thank you everywhere, and people don't expect that, and they're like, what? Huh? What do you say? Like, yeah. So please and thank you are not optional. So even if it's like, even if you know somebody, or even if you've been talking to them for half an hour, let me just say that even if you ask your mother to say, like, can you bring me that book, and then she hands you the book, you say thank you. So like, it's that kind of a culture. So just, you should do that as well, and I quite like it. But then I have been living here for a while, so I'm used to that. So please and thank you are not optional. Always do that whenever you are having interaction. For example, I'll give you an example. When you buy something at the counter, when you're paying for that, there are like 5 thank yous in that. Five thank yous in that. So you put the stuff there at the counter, the checkout girl will say thank you, and then she does that, and then she puts that stuff back down for you. You say thank you. Then she says, like, okay, cash or card. You give the card. She says thank you. Then she gives the machine to you to enter the pin. You say thank you. So you get the picture, I think. Yeah. So please and thank you always. The similar thing is when you're ordering food. In America, it's a different culture. Here, it's a different culture. In India, it's like completely different. So Americans, when they're looking at the menu, they would usually go like, oh, I'll have this, and I'll have this one, and they do this one with this, like that. So they will go, and I will have something. In UK, we don't do that. In UK, we read the menu, whatever questions we have to ask, we ask the question, then we say, okay, yeah, can I have this lasagna, but can you hold the tomatoes and just the lasagna without that? Can I have something? And the waiter or the waiters will always go like, yeah, of course you can. I know, it sounds silly because you know she's going to do that because that's her job and all that, but this is the culture, this is how polite Brits are. So you say, can I have this? And can I have this? Yeah, of course you can. Yeah, sure. And There you go. But it's nice, it's very pleasant. Now that I'm used to it, I think if I go to America, I'll feel very out of place because it's a really different way of doing things. In India, I don't feel out of place because I remember quickly. Then talking on the topic of ordering things in restaurant and then paying the bill. So usually Americans tip much more regularly. The tipping culture is much more prevalent in America, but in here also people do tip, especially in certain situations. For example, the food thing, so which is usually about 10 to 15%, depending on what the size of the bill is, what the size of your party is, and whether you're having lunch or just having a coffee or something like that. So about count on 10%. Yeah. So don't be a jackass. If you are eating in a restaurant and if you're getting good service, tip on top of the bill. Some places they actually put in the bill, they say the service charge included 15% or whatever. So if that service charge means that you don't need to tip. If it's a service tax, that's not the service charge. So then you should add a tip on that. This is one thing that I read on Facebook. Somebody shared a couple of years ago, which I've actually taken into practice now. That some companies, some restaurants, if you pay the bill by card and you add a tip on the device itself, the waiters, the waiting staff does not get that. So I have taken to asking every single time, everywhere I go. I was like, if I add a tip on there, would you get it? So if they say like, yeah, we will get it, or we divide it into the whole kitchen staff and the waiting staff, perfectly fine. If they say no, we don't get it, it goes to the company, then I pay the bill by the card, and then I add tip by cash. So tipping is it's a nice, polite thing to do. Okay, for restaurants or for taxis or things like that. Okay. Talking about transport. So transport wise, this is something that will be okay. This will get me in trouble, but trains do run on time here. So be on time. If you're going to catch a train, be on time, and the train doors close about a minute before the actual departure time. So take that into account. So don't try to get there last minute thinking that the train might be a couple of minutes late anyway. No. And this is something funny because if the British people heard me talking about this, they're going to say like, yeah, they don't. But that's because they have not experienced Indian trains. So the difference is huge. And I can see where they're coming from as well, because I have experienced German trains, German transport, trains, trams, buses. Oh my God. Freaky. But here also, compared to India, the trains and buses here are much more punctual. And there is one app that I would say, National Rail. I will give you the link there in the video. You should download that app and use that app. Even before you come from India, you can book your train and pay by card online, and then you can have your ticket, mobile tickets these days, or you can collect the ticket at the station, and then you are sorted. Then you don't have to go and stand at the machine to buy the tickets. So otherwise, you can buy the tickets at the ticket machines. It's not a big deal. But yes, trains are on time, so plan for that. So you can sometimes plan like you want to be there 5 minutes before, 15 minutes, that's up to you, but don't be 30 seconds late. You won't get the train. Then similarly for buses as well, wherever you are going, if you are traveling in London, if you're going someplace else away from London, there are buses and there are bus apps. So it might be a different company, so there's not one app for all of the buses in the UK, but wherever you're going, just Google it and then see what service they use, and then download the app for that particular bus service. And buses are also usually quite punctual here, so be there on time. The service is good. So if you're coming from US as well, you would know the public transport here is much better than US, so much better, and of course so much better from India. So the bus have GPS installed, and then you can see where the bus actually is at that moment. So you know whether you should run and go for it, or whether it is too late for you and then you should just wait for the next one. Okay, so that is for the buses. And similarly for the taxis also, there are apps. There's Uber that works here, and it's Uber. It's not Uber. If you say Uber here, nobody will understand what you're talking about. So it's Uber. You can have the app. The same app will work here. Just make sure that whatever payment system you had, either Google Pay or PayPal or a credit card, that will work here. So just sort that out beforehand, and then you can use Uber here as well. Even to go from somewhere, from like an airport to go somewhere, you can use the Uber. Or in smaller towns, in other cities, you can use their local taxis. Just Google it and you will find lots of taxis, and some of them have their apps, otherwise you just call them. So wherever you go, just have at least a couple of numbers of those taxi services saved, so that if situation is bad, if you are not getting the train, if it's raining or snowing, then you can just call the taxi. Well, should not talk about snowing in this weather. It's very nice, pleasant weather right now. One more thing, this is my 12th tip, and this is about the power adapter. So you will have, I've talked about the chargers and the power banks and all that in my last one, when I was talking about the general tips for what are the things that you should carry. If you've not seen that, see the 10 essentials for your cabin bag. But you should have at least one power adapter, because the power points, the power plugs here are different from India. So your things that you use there, they will not fit in the plugs here. So you have at least one India to UK, couple of India to UK power adapters, or one multiple. I'll find one. I have quite a few. I bought quite a few from Amazon. I'll give you a couple of links for those. But yes, have at least a couple of power adapters with you, so that whatever stuff you have, like the camera charger, your phone charger, your laptop charger, those things that you need to use immediately, you can start using them. So, and maybe have at least one or two cables, like USB cables, not the full charger, but just the cable as well, because in the buses and usually in the trains as well, sometimes you get power points and sometimes you get those USB points. So you can plug that cable in and you can charge your phone. So you don't want to be without your phone when you're traveling, especially. So the power adapter. Okay, this 13th one is good for anybody, but I'm just saying that for Indians, because especially if you are kind of person who has not been out in other countries, or who has not been very socially active. So this is a book by a writer called Leil Lowndes. I absolutely love her. She's great the way she writes. And this is, she says, how to talk to anyone. And it's got 92 little tricks. And by tricks, she means like little things that you change in your behavior, and it will make it easier for you to talk to other people and, connect. So if you're going to a party, or if you're at the station, if you're meeting a new client or whatever. So these are fantastic tips. I have read this book before, and I'm reading it again. I just bought it a couple of days ago again on Kindle. I'll give you the link for Kindle. It will be a link from UK. I don't know whether it's I'll find the Indian link, don't worry. Okay, so that is a fantastic book, because how she teaches these things is she teaches them by using small stories, and some of those stories I think are like made up to kind of make that point. But even then, because of the stories, it humanizes the story a lot, so it's very hard to forget those things after that, and it makes it very easy to understand as to exactly what you're supposed to do and what effect you expect to have from there. So it's not tricks where you manipulate people or anything like that, or you lie or anything like that. No, it's just tricks as in, if you're meeting somebody for the first time, what kind of questions you should ask, or kind of topics you should talk about or not talk about, things like that. And it is fantastic. It's really great. I cannot recommend it enough. So definitely read this book if you're coming to UK as well. If you're going somewhere else as well, read this book. It'll make it easier for you to fit in a new place. That's it. That's all my 13 tips for for Indians who are traveling from India to UK. I might create another couple of more videos on this topic. One would be something like how to be a vegetarian in the UK, because sometimes Indians are vegetarians, not exclusively, but sometimes they are. So how to find vegetarian food, and what things to look for and all that. And I might do another one as to what things to bring to UK and what things not to bring to UK, because oh my God, I think anytime I see somebody, and this is going to be a stereotype again, but anytime we see somebody from India, they have huge suitcases. I don't know why they bring that huge suitcases here. There's no need. But I will make that as a separate video. I might do another video as in the things and expressions that people here use, which could be, and some that they don't use. So that could be another video as well. So yeah, I have quite a lot to talk about on this topic. I didn't realize that. But anyway, for this video, this is it. These are 13 tips. I hope you find them helpful. I hope they are not offensive to people in the UK and people in India as well. But I'm just trying to be helpful. I'm just trying to help people out who are coming here and just to help them get settled in here without too many issues, without too many problems. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. I will see you in the next one. But until then, safe pass and happy trails.